you so much. I know that was a lot. And prayerfully, I will show you how they connect with each other. Testing. She said it takes a moment to warm up. There it goes. Good morning once again. This is a difficult day. This is a difficult time for our country and for the world. And I must be humble with you and say that I'm a little nervous. This is the time when I think that you need your pastor the most. And to be the sub, to be the guest, is a little scary. But I want to thank you all for bringing me back. I feel like family. And, it's like a family reunion. And I'd like to thank Pastor Tim for trusting me to come and visit you. I'd like to thank Betty, as always, for being a worship leader, for being a friend, for being someone who lifts me up even when I am a little scared. And once again, I thank you for reading the text. Would you pray with me for a moment, please? Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this day, despite of all the hardships and the tribulations that we may be feeling, all the fear, all the sadness. We ask you, Holy Spirit, to come into this service. May the words of my mouth and my body be acceptable to you, O Lord, and to do no harm. Lord, hear your people. Hear the cries of your people. Holy Spirit, come into this service for healing and comfort. Amen. So we've been having this conversation, Pastor Tim and I, for a couple of weeks now. And he told me about your journey through Exodus and other chapters. And I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this. But I believe the Spirit spoke to me and said, take a look at this. Take a look at Exodus. And it's a very, very dark part of the children of Israel's history in the Pentateuch. So the name of this sermon, to give you context, is What is Your Golden Calf? In looking at the text, I kind of go back to my family. And my family had this tradition during Easter, like most of you might have done, was watching the Ten Commandments. It came on in every holiday, and we knew the lines, and my sister Becky would sit there and say things like, how much does an Nile take to get your heart, and there were other lines. The Nubians, here comes Nubians. And there was not always a lot of accuracy in Hollywood during these times. But I never would forget the awe of seeing that water and Technicolor and the Israelites walking through it. And as we got older, we realized how bad the filming actually was. But as a little kid, this was awe-striking. And in childhood and adulthood, I could never understand how could the Israelites have such doubt from a God that had just enabled Moses to part the Red Sea. And then thinking back to the plagues, remember the couple scenes before that, all these plagues and everything that was going on. How was their doubt? How was their fear after they saw Pharaoh's heart hardened and then releasing them from captivity in Israel? There is so much more that I would like to go into this text, but I think she gave us the context of what the situation is. So I'm going to move forward, and bear with me. When I came into ministry, I had this great feeling, thought, inspiration, that the children of Israel, in my life, represent the LGBTQI community. We had been detached. We had been rejected. We had been in exile. And I still believe this, and want to tell you that I went to General Conference this year. Any of you that looked at General Conference knows it was tough. It was rough. It reminded me once again of the doubts and the fears of our religious community, which is very similar to the Israelites and the LGBTQ community. And it kept making me ask for consideration for equality. I was one of the protesters. I was one of the people who stood with their mouth taped. I was one of the people that sang. And from that experience, what I want to tell you the most is what I got from it in sitting in the stands and watching the bishops and watching everybody maneuver and manipulate the system of parliamentary procedure. I came away from everyone is so passionate about their issues and their divide. But we're all children of God. And we all have to look at each other with consideration and with love, doing no harm. And I look at what the bishops are charged to do is what, like Moses, was asked to do. Everyone was afraid to see the face of God, to talk to God. And Moses went up on this mountain and received these 10 commandments, these tablets. But my message got deeper as I prayed about this and thought about this more and looked at what was happening in the last 2 or 3 weeks in my life, in this world, and in our world. So I have to go, okay, here's a couple of disclaimers, because I don't want to make anyone feel bad. I don't want to do any harm. To me, today's message goes beyond General Conference. I don't mean to bring in politics into the church. I don't mean to condemn anyone, white people or black people, or justify violence by any means, condemning violence by every means, or place any blame on any community. I don't mean to lift up our president, but I don't mean to put down the president. I don't mean to condone police brutality. I do have opinions about gun control and gun laws in America. I do have opinions about hate speech and angry voters, divisiveness. People are crying for justice. I hear it, I understand it, we all feel it. But what is justice? I want us to think about that. We're going to come back to that. What is justice? I also want to admit that I am a news junkie. I am inundated. I can't walk into a house without turning on CNN. And I have it on my Sirius radio, CNN. And sometimes I go, you're not doing yourself well because you're not stepping away from this. You're consumed by it. And every now and then I'll go to Fox, because I want to hear what that side is saying, and I go to MSNBC, I want to hear what that side is saying, because I think that it's important to be able to understand where everyone is coming from on major, major issues. I am grieving just like you are. We are all mourning all the lives that have been lost in this world over the last 2-3 days, 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months. We are going through some serious, difficult times, and I don't want to make light of that. But I do want to have a conversation, and please let me make this clear. I'm not here to preach at you. I'm hoping you will give me the time to listen for a minute. There have been so many times in my life when I feel like I have been born to bridge the communities together, to have conversations, not only with the LGBTQI community, but also the black community. My time working up in Bristol Glen reiterated that when I got to work with people that were 20 and 30 years older than myself, and we had very, very powerful conversations about race, about life, about religion, and about LGBT issues. I can only speak for myself, I don't represent any community. I can't speak for any community. I can't speak for the gay community. I can't speak for the black community. I understand that. But I can also offer myself to answer questions and to listen to others with an open mind and respectful dialogue. So after this service, if you would like to talk, if you'd like to fellowship, I am more than willing to do that. But I will emphasize that we must be willing to agree to disagree in love and respect. So let's go back to the Hebrew text for a second. In the Hebrew text, there's a moment of Yahweh being shown as angry and frustrated with his chosen people. We don't like to see or say that God is angry, but we also don't like to condemn our own anger. And I think that's important to put in the context. This past week, actually 10 days, I attended the NEA's convention in Washington, D.C. It's called the Representatives Assembly. The NEA is the National Educators Association. And at the beginning of the week, I participated in a joint conference on minority and women's concerns. How poignant in this time of everything that I'm living and feeling. We brought up terms that must be considered in this conversation of race in America. Terms like intersectionality, systemic racism, institutional racism, a tough word or words, white privilege, internalized racism, internalized my own racism, within my own self and my own race. School to prison pipeline. I don't know how many of you have heard about this, but I'd be more than willing to talk to you. Black on black crime. These are tough terms for a difficult conversation. Some presidential candidates would like to suggest that racism has gotten worse in this country, but I do not agree. I also do not agree that the racial divide is not simply about jobs and poverty. It isn't just that. For minorities, it's more complicated. Let me express this little scenario for you. Some of you might have heard this before. I'm a black man. I have 2 undergraduate degrees, a BFA and a BA. I now have a Master's of Divinity. But when I take this off, people don't see that. People see a black man. And if I'm trying to catch a taxi cab, the taxi cab doesn't see those degrees, doesn't see that professionalism. There is something wrong in our world when we can't see the real person beyond the color of the skin. I think there is progress. Being here is progress. Being with you, being able to talk in hopefully a very compassionate way with you is progress. We are all human, and like it or not, we see and judge by appearance. Black, white, Hispanic or Asian, tall or short, words that I don't like, fat or skinny. We have our own ideas and limitations and discrimination. Male, female, non-gender conforming. We see all of these things. What does this say about our cultural bias? We are just using the instincts that we have learned and societal influences, our morals and our ethics. We're just being products of how we've been raised, how we've lived, and how we've been influenced by society. These terms and concepts that I have learned and discussed in seminary are through an educational ministries class. And as seminarians, we had a tough time. Some of our classmates were offended by the professor when she brought these concepts on us. We said, no, I don't see color. And she's like, yes, you do. It is our reality. These are difficult, complicated levels to discuss on a very important issue. As I've stated, we mourn for the police in Dallas. They are part of that 2 to 3 days. Let me make no mistake, we mourn the loss of these lives. They gave up their lives to protect us, the people of America. The police are human, and we all should respect their jobs. But as in any professional, if there are problems and liabilities, they too must look beyond themselves to be educated and to make the changes to listen to the communities that they serve. Community policing is vital to heal the wounds of racial inequality in our community. Authority without consideration or compassion equals oppression. And that is what we must prevent if we are to have true justice. So let's go back to this concept of justice.